radio is KD on the radio. What?
Today on the show, we bring you proof of the fact that large portions of the medical and pharmaceutical industry in America are glorified drug pushers, as we discuss the largest healthcare fraud takedown operation in American history. And the internet loses its mind on a peace-loving singer-songwriter. Plus, we take on the tough topic of the artist formerly known as Kermit.
It's not easy being green.
Hi, Hoppity. Oh, no.
Let's go! Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So, if you did not believe that the medical industry in America, the pharmaceutical industry in America, is in many ways basically just drug pushers, you're about to. And you know what? I've spent relatively little time going to doctors and in and out of hospital. I've been very fortunate to have, generally speaking, pretty good health. I mean, there's the odd chest infection, there's a case of antibiotics, there's things of that nature. There was that one time I got a flu shot because a friend had a baby and wouldn't let anyone into the house with a flu shot. Oh my God, that's the sickest I've ever been. Never again. But I will say that I don't have that sort of like exposure to doctors kind of trying to overprescribe you stuff. Again, very lucky. I have a really close friend of the family who is a doctor. And whenever I get sick, I kind of go to him for a second opinion or sometimes even a first opinion. And it's usually a phone call. And here's the thing. This guy is not anti-prescribing medication, but a lot of the time, Dr. Z, as I like to call him, he'll prescribe candy. You know, like, hey man, I've got a sore throat. Oh, well, try sucking sour lemon candy, you know, like lemon heads or something like that. I was like, are you really prescribing candy for my sore throat? He was like, well, what it's going to do is going to stimulate your salivary glands, and this is going to, and now I can't remember exactly the medical chain of events that took place when you sucked sour candy, but darned if it didn't make me feel better. So my main source of medical information is one of America's leading oncologists who's also been an army doctor and a medical doctor. And I kind of go to him first, and he's not the type of guy who's going to overprescribe you. So, you know, I heard all these stories about folks that would get opioid painkillers pushed on them. And they'd be like, man, they want to give you those things. Lickety freaking split. And I was like, really? Really? Are you sure? And it always sort of sounded a little sketchy to me. People that told me stories of how they got hooked on painkillers because their doctor didn't advise them the best way to take them. And I'm like, are you sure you weren't just trying to get high? Are you sure that you weren't sort of looking for something like this? And they're no. From out of the blue, I was an addict. And I guess being straight edge, not drinking, not smoking, not taking drugs, not believing in casual sex, these are personal decisions that I've made for myself. But I guess being straight edge, I don't really fully comprehend what it's like to have something like a drug or alcohol get its hooks into you. But it happened this past week, just gone by. The largest healthcare fraud takedown operation in American history is what Attorney General Jeff Sessions is calling it. And it has to do with an opioid scam that totaled like over $1 billion. And it really made me think back to a couple weeks ago. If you've listened to the show for the last month, you probably heard me talk a little bit about my ankle. It's all jacked up. I'm still sort of limping around, but when my ankle initially went, it was some of the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. I was crawling up and down stairs. It was just ridiculous. And I went to the emergency room. I was like, you got to do something. And I had a battery of tests done. Initially, they thought part of the excessive pain might have been because of a pulmonary embolism or a blood clot or deep vein thrombosis. I'd been on a lot of long plane journeys right before this happened, and these are all concerns. As it turns out, it was none of those things. So what I got was some crutches, the advice that I ice it and stay off of it, and some painkillers. And I was like, can you give me anything for the pain? And they're like, well, yeah, here's this like really, really strong ibuprofen. I was like, cool. And they're like, you're probably going to want something a little bit stronger, so why not take this? I was like, is this an opioid? And they're like, well, yeah, but it's stronger. And I can't remember exactly what it was. And I was like, no, not interested. Because I think I'd taken some sort of heavy-duty painkiller when I'd had like a minor procedure done on my finger. I had this thing that had to be, it was gross. Like, I think it was called a knotted capillary. You ever had one of those? Oh, man. The doctor actually burned a hole into my finger with some silver nitrate to cauterize it, and it hurt like the blazes. And, well, he gave me some sort of opioid painkiller to get off of it. It was very strange to see smoke coming out of your finger, but that was my one experience with opiates, and that put me off of them for life.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So like I said, if you don't believe that in some way, shape, or form, the pharmaceutical industry in this country are a bunch of glorified drug pushers, well, you're about to believe differently. But like I said before that, my one experience with opiate painkillers was when I had this thing, it's called a knotted capillary on my finger. As I hold out my first finger, I can still see the little scar right below the fingernail. This little white spot where from out of nowhere, and I thought it was a wart. I showed it to my tour manager at the time. I was like, what's this? He's like, looks like you got a wart on your finger. Put some of this stuff on it, like wart be gone or whatever the hell that stuff is called that people use on warts. And it just wasn't going away, and it wasn't going away, and it wasn't going away. And I was picking at it, and it was bleeding. And eventually my tour manager was like, look, kid, you got to go to the doctor. That thing's gnarly. I don't want to I don't need to be looking at that all day. So I went. The doctor, quick as a flash, went, oh, yeah, you have a knotted capillary in your hand. I was like, no kidding. I didn't know that was a thing until now. He was like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. We're going to cauterize it with some silver nitrate. And he gave me a local anesthetic shot in my finger, so I couldn't feel anything. And then he got this silver nitrate stick out, and he basically, and it's a crazy thing, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but he cauterized it, and there was smoke coming out of my finger. I was like, I can't feel a thing. He was like, yeah, well, you're gonna later. So here, take some of these painkillers. And I don't remember what it was he gave me. I think it might have been codeine. I'm not positive. But he gave me some codeine, and my finger was in screaming pain after the anesthetic wore off. So I popped some codeine, felt a little better. And then I woke up the next morning. I was like, I feel terrible. I'm in a haze. I'm in this fog, and I don't like that. Must have been that painkiller that I took. And I was foggy and groggy all day, and I couldn't stand the way I felt. And that night, my finger was in screeching pain again, so I took another one. The pain went away, but I woke up feeling just like hell the next day. And I wasn't sure. I didn't know if I'd just been tired or whatever. So I wasn't sure if it was necessarily this codeine stuff that the doctor had prescribed me that was making me feel like a dog's breakfast. But after 2 nights in a row of that, I was like, I'm over it. No more of this for me. Thanks very much. And cut to years later, my ankle's all jacked up, and they give me some painkillers. They give me some extra strength Nurofen or extra. What do they put in Advil? What's that called? It's not aspirin. It's on the tip of my tongue. Funkhauser. What is it?
Ibuprofen? Is that what you're
there? You
about?
Go. They gave me like extra strength ibuprofen for my ankle, which, helps with swelling and all that sort of stuff. But they're like, here's some sort of opiate painkiller. I can't remember exactly what it was for when you need something stronger. I was like, no, I'm not interested in that. And They're like, well, just take it because, you're going to be in pain and it'll save you the trip. I'm like, I'll deal. Thanks. I hate the way that stuff makes me feel. I won't be able to drive. I got a lot of stuff. No, thank you, but no. And they looked at me and they were like, do you have a history of opiate abuse? And I was like, what? No, I don't like that stuff. And they're like, are you sure? I was like, no, it's fine. Look, I'm asking you not to give it to me. I want you to not write me that prescription. Clearly I don't have a problem with it. Clearly I'm not someone who's potentially about to abuse it. And they're like, okay. Then they come back a little while later and they're like, well, we're just going to write you the prescription anyway because you're probably going to be in pain and this will save you a trip. You won't have to hobble. You won't have to deal with wheelchairs or whatever. You won't have to come back to the emergency room in the middle of the night. We're just going to write you a prescription. I was like, no, I told you no like 3 times. I don't want whatever this is. And then as I'm checking out, they're like, cool, and here's your prescription for the painkiller. I was like, I refused this multiple times now. In fact, you even asked me if I had a problem with opiate painkillers. So you suspect that I might be the type of person that would abuse this stuff, yet you're still literally pressing a prescription for like 200 of these pills into my hand as I'm leaving. Now, I don't think that specific nurse was some sort of pusher, but clearly there was some sort of agenda. There was some sort of insistence and some sort of reason behind that insistence that I take these things that are hop, skip, and a jump away from heroin. What is it called? Hillbilly heroin. And so I was just like, fine. Prescription never filled. Probably not valid anymore. Don't have it. But I had to argue with them to stop them from giving me something that was incredibly addictive when they thought there was a chance that I might be someone that would abuse that stuff. And I finally saw what other people go through and how easy it must be to get hooked on this stuff. Take it. No thanks. Just take it. No thanks. No, here's a prescription. Take it. Oh, all right then. You are a doctor. You are a medical professional that I trust. This stuff can't be bad for me, can it? And this stuff is no joke. Really good friend of mine, a musician that I was working with for quite some time. He had a problem with pain pills. And this is a guy who, we'd been through the wars together. We'd been in a band together. We'd rocked thousands of people. We had been through the high times, the low times, and all the times in between. You build and forge strong friendships with people when you go through the high times, the low times, and all the times in between together. And what this guy did in the name of his pain pill addiction is something that I'll never forget. Didn't matter that we were close. Didn't matter that we were brothers. Didn't matter that we were friends. Didn't matter that we were pursuing a dream together. What he did to me because of his addiction blew my mind.
Money making, skills on the mic, give me paid every day, and you're part of the battle, just bow down, better act if you know.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah, give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on.
So Attorney General Jeff Sessions is saying that it is the largest healthcare fraud takedown operation in American history. And it centers around what? Opioid painkillers. Massive problems with these things here in America. And I've seen firsthand what addiction to this stuff does to people. Buddy of mine. A guy that I've been through a lot with. Guy that I was in a band with. Guy that I trusted implicitly. Guy that I know doesn't have a bad or malicious bone in his body. And he got hooked on pain pills. I think he'd had an old soccer injury flare up. He had some sort of problem. He went to the doctor, got some pain pills. Now, this is a guy that liked to party as well. And he was very quick to notice that these pain pills were a good time when he was out and about. And I guess that's how it began. And I don't know. He didn't talk about it, exactly how he managed to get these pain pills. I don't know how he managed to keep getting them after time had run out. But I do know that it absolutely overtook his life. Like I said, this is a good dude. This is a guy who I'd been in the wars with. When you're in a band, on the road, hucking it out, in a van, fighting for your music, winning people over, sometimes playing to tens of thousands of people and sometimes playing to thousands of tens of people, you forge a bond. You're in the trenches together. It's real stuff. And even when you don't get along, and sometimes you don't, sometimes you're in bands with people that you absolutely don't get along with. But even when you don't get along with folks, it bonds you. And so, like I said, this guy, super good guy, tight bond with him. One day I show up to the practice space and I notice like this massive shiny new amp that I got was not there. I'm like, hey, kind of a big hole where my amplifier used to be. Anybody know what happened to that? And he was like, oh yeah, man, I just I took it home. I wanted to practice at home. I was like, well, you don't play guitar, so. And he's like, yeah, but I wanted to. I was like, okay, that's cool. Just bring it back next time. And next time, I'm like, so where's my amp? He's like, oh, yeah, forgot it. Okay, don't forget. And time after that, oh, it's craziest thing. I had it in my parents' garage so I could rock out. And then my dad backed his car into it. And now I'm in a fight with my dad because he won't give me the money for it. He said it was my fault for leaving it there. I said it was his fault for backing into it. And as soon as I get the money, man, I'll buy you a new one. I'm sorry. And I knew. And I guess I knew the second that thing was missing. But I knew what had happened to it. I knew that this guy who, like I said, one of the warmest, kindest, friendliest individuals you could ever meet. One of the most solid people I've ever had the pleasure of working with or making music with. Did something horrible and inconceivable. He stole from me. And then he sold my property, I'm sure, to finance his habit of pills. Takes over your life, destroys who you are, ruins your relationships. And I know it ruins my relationships. Or I know it ruins people's relationships because the moment that happened, I was like, all right, well, I think I'm done with this. And I think I'm done with you. And he was like, I promise I'll get you the money. I was like, cool, man. Well, we'll start working again together when that happens. That was several years ago. And I really don't know what kind of state he's in now. But last time I saw him, he wasn't exactly sparkling. This smart kid. Talented kid, everything to give in the world. Really solid dude. And he went in, a couple of years previous, he went in to have an old soccer injury looked after, got some pain pills, and his life was literally never the same again after that. I think he's been to rehab, kind of lost touch over the years. When you're dealing with an addict, you find out pretty quickly that it's best to not deal with an addict. It's not someone that you feel comfortable having in your home, around your stuff. Not someone you feel is healthy to have in your immediate environment. And it's sad because sometimes those people are your very good friends and you have to let them go. You have to draw a line in the sand and you have to say, hey, till this gets figured out, can't come around anymore. But I saw how it happened. And I saw that he kept getting prescriptions filled. I don't know how it happened. And I heard from his family and some friends that he had sort of like a selection of crooked doctors that he would go to get these prescriptions filled. where he would pay them extra money on top of the cost of the actual drugs to get a prescription written. There's a little circuit of crooked doctors. And to me, this was unthinkable. This is unimaginable. I've always trusted doctors. I've always trusted them as an authority figure. If I've ever had to deal with them, if I've ever had a medical problem, I ask a lot of questions. And there's been times where I haven't been comfortable with a doctor, so I ask for another one that maybe has a little bit more experience with my particular problem. But overall, I've always felt a level of trust toward the medical community. And I do believe that you have to. But this pain pill thing is a genuine billion-dollar-a-year industry. Pushing pain pills on people that don't need it, billion-dollar-a-year industry. And we know this because, as Jeff Sessions said, the largest healthcare fraud takedown operation in American history, more than 400. Did you read about this? More than 400 people were arrested. Doctors, nurses, pharmacists, from top to bottom, in an opioid scam that totaled $1.3 billion. It's a billion-dollar-a-year industry. Multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. This is just a tiny little segment of the population. You think about the medical community as a whole. You factor in doctors, nurses, and pharmacists, and you figure that 400 people were taken down. And those 400 people were responsible for $1.3 billion. It's a huge amount of money, but it's a tiny, tiny amount of the medical professional population in this country. Among those charged, 6 doctors from Michigan who were accused of a scheme to prescribe unnecessary opioids. There was a rehab facility in Florida who supposedly were recruiting addicts. A rehab facility. Yes, rehabilitation facility, a place that's supposed to help you clean up your addictions. They were recruiting addicts with gift cards and visits to strip clubs. And this wound up leading to $58 million in false treatments and tests. It's insane. Medical professionals, people that we trust with our lives. Sessions said that nearly 300 healthcare providers are being suspended or banned from participating in federal healthcare programs. Investigators uncovered illegal practices like false and fraudulent billing, distribution and prescription of controlled substances without legitimate medical purposes. That would be those crooked doctors we were talking about earlier. And what do you do when you're making all that sweet, sweet do-re-mi off of people's addictions to pain pills? Well, you need to launder your money, so there's a massive money laundering scheme that went with all of this. There was a transportation company that was billing for trips that were never taken. They uncovered over $400,000 in fraudulent claims. So like I said, if there was any doubt in your mind that the pharmaceutical industry in this country, and probably the world over, isn't crooked, that would be your tip off. But what's interesting though is the level of corruption that exists in America with regard to addiction to these things is significantly higher because there's much better dollars to be made off of it here than a lot of other places. Like England, where I grew up. You know how Southern rappers, they have that thing where they've got this cup and there's some undefined red substance in there? Well, anybody from the dirty, dirty South that enjoys hip-hop music knows that they are sliding on that purple oil. They have that lean in the cup. And what that is, 9 times out of 10, is there's like a soda, like Sprite or something like that, and that's mixed up with codeine cough syrup. And that is a drink of choice. People abusing codeine cough syrup. Now, I asked a very prominent Houston rapper that I know how much that stuff costs. And he's like, $800 to $1,000 a bottle or something like that, which was beyond belief to me. Only because I used to get that stuff over the counter. Cough syrup with codeine in it costs like £8.50 over the counter, not illegal. And what's interesting was I'd never you're in the rock and or roll community. There's people wanting to get blitzed in all manner of interesting ways in England. But most of the drugs that I saw people doing were ecstasy, speed, cocaine, marijuana, drugs of that nature. That's what I saw in England. It was only when I came to America when I saw people recreationally taking pharmaceutical drugs. I was like, what are you doing? They're like, oh, yeah, these are great. These have codeine in them. This cough syrup has codeine in it. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? You're getting high off stuff that you can get in Boots Chemist over the counter? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Got a good deal on this stuff, only $15 a pill. I was like, what the hell? It's got a teeny tiny little amount of codeine in it, and you can get it for zip zing nada in England. So because it's legal in England, it hasn't been monetized the same way. It's not the forbidden fruit. It's not stolen goods. It's not misappropriated goods. So you don't have to pay big bucks to get it. And as a consequence, people are a lot less bent out of shape about this in places where it's not illegal to go into a store and just buy some for personal use. Now, I'm not saying this makes England any better, but I am saying that there's an interesting twist of fate going on here where by making it legal, by not making this a prescription thing, by not making it such a big freaking deal, there's an entire $1 billion criminal enterprise that exists here that does not exist there. And what comes with criminal enterprises? Violence, theft, death, messing with people's lives, recruiting addicts through rehab centers with visits to strip clubs. This is a whole clandestine, hideous industry that preys on people that does not exist in other parts of the world. I'm not saying these prescription medications aren't abused in other parts of the world, but because of the way it's been handled here in the US of A, it has allowed a very fertile breeding ground for a certain type of criminal. And like I said, when we began this conversation, if you didn't believe that prescription drugs, pharmaceuticals in this country was glorified drug pushing, I'm sure you'll agree with me now that it is. All right then, Funkhauser. This refuses to go away, and we'll talk about it a little later on, but Kermit the Frog got fired. We've been following this saga for a little bit. Somehow the Kermit the Frog controversy will not die down, and finally, we have a bit more of an idea why the Kermit the Frog puppeteer, what's that guy called? The Steve Whitmire. We have an idea as to why Steve Whitmire was fired, and it comes straight from the mouths of Jim Henson's children. We'll get into that later, why they axed Kermit the Frog. Right now, though, let's take a look at the events of today in our segment, My Witness News.
This is My Witness News. In no way, shape, or form fair and certainly not balanced. And now, super producer to the stars, Barry Funkhauser. Barry Funkhauser.
Oh, yes.
Barry Funkhauser.
Yes. Okay, just time for one before break here.
Okay, cool.
After he was mocked for his cameo appearance on Game of Thrones, Ed Sheeran deleted his Twitter account.
Yeah, I guess he went on Game of Thrones. I haven't watched it, but I guess he went on Game of Thrones, and he was supposed to be like ye old-timey minstrel, and he sang in a distinctly 2017 sort of way, and people went, this was terrible, and they made fun of him, and he got so upset that he deleted his Twitter account. So what Game of Thrones fans may lack in sexual prowess, they make up for in cyberbullying abilities.
Sometimes you just know you're done. You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio 104.1.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again in the ill behavior. Delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior.
So the Kermit the Frog. Do you think I've got a chance of getting the gig, Funkhauser?
You might have to wait another 27 years. We'll see.
Kermit the Frog. Any good?
Getting better.
Piggy. I think that's the one thing I can say convincingly. Piggy. But then the rest of it goes away. Like, that sounds like the frog, right?
I mean, you sound like Kermit's
Piggy.
cousin at this point.
Hi, hoppity ho. Maybe not. But the controversy around the firing of Kermit the Frog, it's funny to do it badly, has refused to die down. The puppeteer, Steve Whitmire, is all kinds of upset that he got canned. And, well, it's not a good look. You fired Kermit the Frog? You know, it's just like, what are you going to... It was like when I confidently believe that it's destroyed many a presidential career when they've talked about possibly shutting down the children's television network. Like, you're going to fire Big Bird? Well, same deal when you fire Kermit the Frog. And here's the thing. The folks that made the decision to fire Kermit the Frog, or the puppeteer behind him, had to defend their actions recently, and they did so. Now, why were the reasons that Kermit the Frog was fired? Apparently, he was bitter, angry, and a depressed victim. Yes, we'll get into the full story a little later on. Right now, though, let's take a look at the events of today. What's going on, Funkhauser? Are you laughing at Kermit the Frog's pain?
No.
What?
Are you ready? It's not easy being green.
You know, I kid you not. If I'm alone and I know I'm not going to be interrupted, and wow, this sounds like really clandestine. And what I'm talking about, if I'm alone and I know I'm not going to be interrupted, and I put on It's Not Easy Being Green, the duet version of it that Kermit the Frog sings with Ray Charles, tears, absolute tears. Same with the Rainbow Connection. It's just...
I don't have to be alone for that. That'll just happen.
Yeah.
You just talk about it, and I start to tear up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and look, they fired a puppeteer. They fired someone who they trusted with their brand and this creation.
Bad
that
form.
Jim Henson
That's bad
came
form.
up with. And they fired the guy, and everyone sort of like, immediately connects the two. You fired the frog that sang Rainbow Connection? No. Absolutely not. Not cool. No. By the way, ever since I started trying to do the Christopher Walken impersonation, it keeps coming out when I'm not intending for it to. Did you hear that? No. You fired the frog. Terrible news.
Can you combine the two? Maybe you can be Kermit.
Interestingly enough, I've heard some people say that the secret to doing a good Christopher Walken is to take Kermit the Frog and bring the voice down, I think. Like, hi, hoppity ho. Hi, hoppity ho. Like, I don't know. I don't see that. But some people say that Christopher Walken is basically Kermit the Frog with a deeper voice. There's that.
Oh.
No.
Alrighty then.
It's terrible news. And the frog, he's fired. Is that good, Funkhauser?
Yes. But keep practicing.
I appreciate your honesty and your candor. What's going on in the news?
James Franco is starring in a movie about the worst movie ever made. Is it Room?
I think that means he's playing himself in a movie about The Interview. That did not live up to the hype. Go on.
Megyn Kelly's show on NBC is still getting beat by reruns of America's Funniest Home Videos.
Oh my God. That deal, the balance sheet on that thing must be hemorrhaging money. Like, Megyn Kelly went over to NBC when everybody, literally everybody on the planet knew her name. She got into it with Donald Trump during the debates, and he said she had blood coming out of her wherever, implying that she was experiencing menses, and her mood was affected by that. And not just America, but the internet all over the world lost its ever-loving mind. People across the globe knew Megyn Kelly's name, and she had a very shrewd agent who went, now's the time to get you a new deal. Couldn't have worked out better for her. Like, her stock could not have been higher when she moved to NBC. I'm sure she got... there was this talk that she took a pay cut to do it, but she might have taken a pay cut, but if she didn't... What she might not be making in money, I'm sure she makes up for in autonomy, meaning she doesn't have to do a single freaking thing that she doesn't want to. Like, there's no part of her deal, I'm sure, that involves anything that she thought would be unpleasant or a waste of her time going into it. But yeah, like I said, literally all the money in the world went into Megyn Kelly's show on NBC, and it's getting beat by reruns of America's Funniest Home Videos. This news has NBC executives down. And Donald Trump ecstatic. I'm surprised Trump. I haven't been paying much attention to Donald Trump's Twitter of late, but I'm surprised he hasn't been going after her ratings left, right, and center. Like, that seems to be a big part of his MO when he goes after news personalities.
Other things to worry about now? Question mark, maybe.
He went after Joe Scarborough and his wife's facelift that she was apparently badly bleeding from. They wanted to meet with me at Mar-a-Lago. I said no. It's like, it's the exclamation point that follows everything that he tweets, and the expressions like, biggest healthcare scam ever uncovered in all of American history. Bad! Exclamation point. They wanted to meet with me at Mar-a-Lago. I said no! Exclamation point. Like, I think that's the part that amuses me the most, but I haven't seen his Twitter of late, so I don't know if he's been going after Megyn Kelly and NBC, but I don't know. We'll wait and see. It's low-hanging fruit, Donald. You're missing it. What else?
Charlie Sheen is in the news. He's now a vegan.
Yeah, you can read more about it by Googling Too Little Too Late. Go on.
Michael Vick is in the news. He said if Colin Kaepernick wants a job in the NFL, then he should first cut off his afro.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some snaps with relation to Colin Kaepernick in that one, but anytime I hear Michael Vick's name, I get really mad. This is the guy who was, of course, busted for dog fighting. And I just kind of feel as though, well, he's no longer in the NFL. He's no longer useful as a professional athlete. So the way he did to his dogs that outlived their usefulness in the world of dogfighting, we should now be able to electrocute him to death and bury him in a swamp.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
All right, Funkhauser, in a little bit, we'll dig up dirt on Kermit the Frog and find out. We'll find out exactly why. Well, no, I mean, Kermit the Frog goes on. The legend will continue. However, the guy that played Kermit the Frog was dismissed.
He didn't get his 30-year-old cake, though. To celebrate, he was almost there.
It was like 27 years, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder what happens in that situation. Like, if you're the voice of Kermit the Frog and you get fired, that's a pretty narrow skill set. I wonder if I guess he's a puppeteer and he has, I'm sure, other voices.
He can write a book. There's all kinds of stuff he could do. He'll be fine. But still, what's that
pornographic Muppet musical? Avenue Q? Like, maybe if he's all bitter, twisted, and inappropriate, he could get a job. Have you ever seen that? I've never been to a musical, but I've seen some stuff from Avenue Q on YouTube. It's pretty freaking hilarious. I know this is a musical that's like 15 years old, so we're not exactly being topical here, but I do think that, there's probably a job out there for this guy if he so chooses to keep working. I wonder what you get paid for being Kermit the Frog for 27 years. You would think bazillions of dollars, but I don't know.
Do you get licensing if you voice toys? And if you get fired, do you still get the licensing?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's worked out in the vagaries of the deal, but I would imagine at the very least, every single time something with your voice on it airs, you get money. Depending. Well, I guess it all really depends on what kind of deal he signed when he became Kermit the Frog. I don't know. It's an interesting one, to be sure. What do you get paid to be Kermit? Very, very curious.
27 years ago, it was pre-internet also, so a lot has changed.
A lot has changed. All All right, well, we'll discuss exactly why Kermit the Frog was fired a little later on. Trying to figure out if it gets funnier or more cringeworthy every time I say.
You gotta keep
Kermit the
practicing.
Frog. Hi, hubbity ho. It's not easy being
We gotta get you some copy. Something to read.
Biggie.
Like, do tomorrow's monologue entirely in Kermit's voice.
Let's see. Muppet News. Michael Vick said if Colin Kaepernick wants a job in the NFL, he should first cut off his afro.
There you go. That was.
I think that sounds like
great.
a Muppet. It doesn't sound like Kermit.
You sound like the hippie girl with the hair.
Janice?
Ooh, yes, a little bit.
Notice how I totally knew her name right off the bat. I freaking love the Muppets. I'm taking this hard. I'm wearing my pain on the inside, but like the idea that there's any kind of scandal associated with the Muppets, it's tough. It's like when I found out the voice of the original Charlie Brown in A Charlie Brown Christmas got busted for, I think, meth or something like that.
Well,
Terrible.
keep lobbying. You know, as soon as the heat goes down, we might be able to get him on the show.
I don't know. I don't know if I want.
How do you even say formerly Kermit?
Formerly,
The artist formerly known as Kermit? the green one?
Oh, God.
I hope he drops a rap album. That'd be great.
Well, I mean, like... Okay, so children's entertainment, there's something hilarious about it when, you know, when you take a beloved children's entertainment character and have... It's why all over the country there are pictures of Calvin urinating on the back of pickup trucks. And from Calvin and Hobbes. And I hate that because... Muppets, Calvin and Hobbes, Peanuts, these things are sacred to me. Not only are they nostalgia, but there's incredible beauty in these simple one-line drawings and these simple puppets that they just... there's a purity to them, and it's tough to see that debased in any sort of way. And when people do that, like... And the other thing is, like, I don't know if you're a Calvin and Hobbes reader, but Bill Watterson, incredibly inspiring guy. He retired from making Calvin and Hobbes cartoon strips at the height of his success. And not only that, unlike the folks that were responsible for Peanuts and Garfield and Bloom County and all of the above, he refused to do any kind of merchandising. He was willing to sell books, collected volumes of his work, but he would not deal with t-shirts, he would not deal with stuffed animals, he would not deal with any kind of licensing or merchandising because he felt like that would water down what he was doing. And he quit because he felt as though he'd gotten to a point where the syndicated cartoon format wasn't being supported and embraced the way it used to be. Column inches were getting less and less, and the art was getting compressed more and more, and he was just like, you know what, this is not why I got into it. I'm out. And he very graciously retired, didn't do any sort of like hideous money grabs, and the guy has principles out the yang. He's sort of like the Hunter S. Thompson. Maybe not. No, that's wrong. That's the wrong comparison. But he's sort of like Calvin and Hobbes is almost. No. Again, comparing it to Catcher
You
in the
can
Rye
come back
doesn't
to
make
this.
a lot of sense. But but there's a purity to this stuff, and anytime that purity is usurped in any way, shape, or form, I get a little testy about it. So I'm actually kind of taking the Kermit thing a little hard. So let's get back to the news, and then we'll discuss the Kermit scandal.
The 8th person from Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with a Russian lawyer has been identified. Number 8.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ed Sheeran. He's like literally everywhere these days.
What am I doing here? Would you like to hear a song?
I just showed up with my guitar.
I brought
and all
my
of a sudden,
pedal.
I'm a billionaire.
My pedal.
Well, look, we talked more than you would expect a vaguely political talk radio show to talk about Ed Sheeran in the past, but I just admire that guy so much. Like, for those that missed it, Ed Sheeran gets a pass from me on literally everything, up to and including the appearance on Game of Thrones, because of the way he made himself. He was a guy that, like, would sleep on train station floors and on park benches as he was going from town to town with his acoustic guitar, building himself up. And he had, an account through I think TuneCore, or one of those music distribution services for independent artists, where you put your music up there and you sell it yourself without a label and all of that. And he just sort of put his music online and proceeded to go around the country in England and around the world as much as he could, just him and a guitar, hucking it out. And he said when he was offered his major label record deal, it was a really, really big conundrum for him, because he'd been completely self-contained up until that point without anybody interfering in what he did. And he said his last check that he got from TuneCore was for $500,000. That's a lot of cash. And he did that completely on his own. He did that by himself with a guitar, sleeping rough many nights to make it from one town to another town. And I just have nothing but time for that guy. So, yeah, he gets a pass from me on any and everything, up to and including deleting his Twitter account because he couldn't handle the Game of Thrones trolls. What else?
What could they have said? Ed's a nice guy. Leave him alone. Leave him
also,
alone.
I think he's very low tech. You know, like he
seems like that kind of guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I've got a cell phone that occasionally I text with, and my management calls me on it. I'm not all wired into everything. It's not necessary. You know, it's not something I want to indulge in. And I think he got a lot of pressure to get in on to be part of Twitter or Instagram and all forms of social media from his record label. And he finally gets it together, has a Twitter account, and he gets nothing but hate from it from Game of Thrones fans. Meanwhile, he's literally the biggest pop star in the world right now. Him, perhaps Justin Bieber. I don't know. Him, Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift. I think those are the biggest. Like, he's the biggest literally all over the world. And he was like, yeah, I've got literally all the money. I'm literally the biggest star. I don't need to do Twitter. It's kind of like when Louis C.K. bailed on Twitter. He was just like, I just sold out 3 nights at Madison Square Garden, and you just never get the best version of me on Twitter. And I understand people have to do it, but I don't have to, and because I don't have to, I'm going to purify how I go through the world by not having it. If you didn't have to have Twitter for work, Funkhauser, would you?
No, I would not. Absolutely not. I would be a little egg. And my name would be random person 123, and I would never check it. What about you?
Well,
sometimes I feel I wanted, I would be left out, but nah.
I like for radio, like Twitter's my favorite form of all the medias to interact with people on, because Twitter's limited in characters. And with Twitter, what you can do is respond to everybody. If someone sends you an email, with a bunch of bullet points about your playlist that day, well, oftentimes you don't have the hours left in the day to respond to that properly. But Twitter, because they're limited to what they can say, you can respond to literally everything. So I like that. I like that in real time I can respond to anything and everything that people tweet at us. That's really cool. At ADSXE is where you can tweet me, or you can tweet Funkhauser at FunkFM. That's cool from a radio perspective. If it wasn't part of my job in that way, the only thing that would keep me on Twitter would probably be watching Mets games, live tweeting Mets games, because like as an out-of-market fan, you really kind of do get a vibe from other people. It's like one of my favorite parts of the year. I look forward to Mets Twitter taking off during spring training, and I look forward to cheering and consoling one another online, because it really does make you part of a shared experience. When the Mets were in the World Series in 2015, oh, what a great year that was. When the Mets were in the World Series in 2015, I remember our night guy, Marty, at one of the stations I work for, was like, I'll come over to your house and watch the World Series. I'll cheer for the Mets with you. I was like, but you're an Oakland A's fan. And he was like, I'll cheer for the Mets. I was like, you know what? No. And he was like, what do you mean no? I was like, because you're not going to be engaged. You won't really care. You're just going to be sort of like poking through the fridge, being like, do you have any more of these? Looking around, not interested in it. You can come over literally any other time. I'm not trying to be inhospitable, but no, I don't want you distracting from my experience of my New York Mets being in the World Series under any circumstances. I would rather sit there sharing the excitement with engaged fans on my phone via Twitter. So yeah, no, I think I would probably stay on Twitter because of being an out-of-market sports fan. But other than that, I don't know. I don't know if Twitter would be a thing for me. I certainly... I was thinking about Facebook the other day. I think I read someone's someone's Facebook status, and I don't know what it was about. I don't know if it was about politics or a politician or what the hell, but like this person that I'm friends with was just like, I just have, and we've all, well, I don't do this, but I would imagine that we've all done this at one point. I no longer do it because I refuse to disagree with anybody on social media. It's such a time suck and a life suck that it's not something that is productive that I want to engage in any way, shape, or form. So I don't get into this sort of stuff online, but we all know people, and most of us have done something like this. We're like, I can't stay silent any longer. I just have to weigh in on this. And like social media is, when you think about it, Facebook, that's a room full of your friends. When was the last time you went out to hang with your friends at dinner time, barged into everybody else's conversation and said, you know what? I've got something to say about this. I've held my tongue for too long, but this person that you voted for is just, I don't treat my friends like that in real life. Why would I treat my friends like that online? I was just like, shut up. It's just like, it gives people this unbelievable sense of self-importance. You're not an expert, nor am I. You're not a professional at this, nor am I. You, me, all of us, you know what we have? We have an internet connection. There's a Fishbone album, a great Fishbone album called Give a Monkey a Brain, and he'll swear he was the center of the universe. Well, I think of that all the time when I think about what the internet has become. Give a monkey an internet connection. Give a monkey Wi-Fi. He'll swear he was the center of the universe. And that's what it's become. Hey, we didn't get a chance to talk about the sad story of Kermit the Frog. We'll unveil what the actual true-to-life controversy is surrounding the Muppet firing a little later on, like tomorrow. Thank you for hanging.